Hey guys, this is Echo Soundworks with ADSR, and in this video, I'm going to show you a few different techniques that you can use to take any snare sample and make it sound more tonal. So if you've ever wanted like a tonal future-based dubstep or trap snare, this will help you out. Now, I use probably 3 methods quite consistently when I'm trying to create this type of snare sound. There are for sure more, but I find that these 3 are the most consistent. So I have a basic drum groove worked up. Let's listen to it real quick. All right, so in short, long story short, the 3 ways are, the first way is to find the frequency of the snare, the actual note, the fundamental frequency, and accentuate it with processing and editing. The second way would be to layer your snare with a tonal by nature type of percussive sound, like a tom, a clav, some type of bell, Foley sounds, metal, right? And the third way would be to layer that sound with a very processed synth shot from, say, Serum, Massive, whatever you want to use, right? So let's look at the first method, isolating the fundamental frequency or the frequency of the snare and accentuating it. Now, I'm using a snare from one of my packs in this video, so I already know the pitch. It says C. But let's say you don't know the pitch. You need to pull up a spectrum analyzer or something where you can see the frequency and convert that to hertz. Hopefully it does it for you. So this plugin called Voxengo Span does all the hard work for you. You can also use EQ8 inside of Ableton. Now, if you're not an Ableton user, I would go with Voxengo Span. So let's play this snare. Now, I'm gonna freeze where after I play it, right? And you can change the settings. I'm not on the best setting for this, but it'll work for right now. This first little bump down here, this will be your there, that's a better one. This will be your fundamental, right? And this is at C. Now our second harmonic here is F. Our third is, it appears to be another C. And then all this kind of spiked up hair looking part up here. These are the higher harmonics that make up the bulk of the sound for the snare, that high end sizzle. So we're going to want to bring out C5 or C4. We could even try bringing out this F, but that would be a little, that wouldn't be as consistent. So now that I know the pitch, if I didn't already know the pitch, if it wasn't in the name of the sample, I would duplicate that sound, which I've already done, and I'll start to process it. So first thing I did, and I did this off camera just so it was a little bit quicker, is I just pulled up EQ8. In band 1 and band 8, I'm just using those to cut out the lows and the high. And then band, you could choose any band for this, 3 or 4 or 5, whatever. I found C4, about 515 hertz, and Ableton and EQ8 will show you that down here. So if I move this around, we can see, right? And there is a little bit of wiggle room of C4. You can see that from about 512 up to around 540, it's all C. So you might want to play around with that. So let's bring in the cuts to the lows and the highs, and we'll bring those out a little bit. So it's kind of like this like big old, like, I don't know what the shape is. It kind of looks like a nipple to me. So let's play the snare. Right, so our tonal snare is starting to take shape. Now you could take this a step further. I'm not going to do this in the video. You could duplicate your EQ and you could go to the next harmonic. So we could go up to C5 and see if that helps, but I'm not going to do that for this video. Let's go to the next step of processing, which is going to be saturation. Now, you'll want to mess around with the type of saturation dependent on the snare, and there's no way I can say this type of saturation is going to sound the best because it partly depends on the source material and the upper harmonics within the snare. So for instance, I like using digital clip a lot in Ableton. So I'm going to crank up the drive, turn the output down so we can really hear this effect. Right, there's digital clip. Let's try analog clip. A little bit more mellow for sure. Let's try wave shaper. Right, so I like digital clip for this example. Let's turn the drive down. All right, so we can take this a step further, get a little bit more scientific with it. I want this on digital clip, not sinoid. What are we doing here? All right, that's the one. So I can go back to my EQ8. Let's see what the frequency is for this. It's around 523 hertz. So let's find 523 hertz here or around there. So now our saturation is at that frequency as well. Even though we don't have a lot of other frequencies in it, I'm being a little bit anal, but That is the snare. Let's bring this back in with the other snare now. So the next plugin that I'll find myself using with this method of creating a tonal snare is going to be some type of transient shaper. So I can make maybe the body of the snare a little bit longer, or start to, take out the attack. So let's actually try taking out the attack a little bit of this snare. Because realistically, in the actual snare sound itself, the body is what's going to have more of what we're hearing as the frequency and the pitch. So let's turn up the sustain as well. So that'll actually just make it kind of blend nicer with our actual snare sound that we're using. So then the last thing you can do to kind of tighten that all together would be maybe try adding some reverb. Right, so we clearly have a tonal sounding snare going. Well, let's move to the second technique or method, which is layering the snare with a percussive sound that's tonal in nature. Maybe a tom, maybe a clav, maybe just anything that has ring to it, right? So let's do that now, and we'll just keep this snare. We'll kind of layer all three ideas together and see where we get. So I'm going to go into a sample folder here, and let's just see what we can find. All right, so this one's clearly got a pitch to it, so let's drag that in. So first thing you might want to do is you might want to check the frequency, right? So let's do that now. All right, so this looks like its first fundamentals at B. So I might just need to tune this up a semitone to get it to C. That would be nice if it sounds right. So let's solo these all together. All right, so I was just listening as I did that. So because this is a layered sound, sometimes when you use things like Voxengo Span or EQ8, you might get a weird readout essentially. So this does sound like it fits with these snare sounds. So I'm going to trust my ears over my eyes here. I know sometimes that can be a little bit scary, but that sounds pretty good. So let's listen to it with this first hit obviously having the extra percussion, second snare hit just the snare and the tonal snare we made. So off camera, I actually did a couple changes, added one more sample just to speed up this video here. So same idea as the first technique. I took out the low frequencies I didn't want and boosted around the harmonic or fundamental with that first percussion sound that we found together, and then I added a little bit of the glue compressor. So let's actually mute the main tonal snare that we had, and let's just play what we got. All right, I did find another tonal-esque sample. It's a tambourine. I shortened it. I did have to change the pitch. It's -2 semitones, and then applied similar processing with the EQ, a little bit of reverb. So let's bring that into it. Right, and we have the tonal element. Now notice that I have the main tonal snare, the first one that we looked at in this video, that is off. We can bring that back in, maybe turn it way down. Or do the inverse, turn this up and turn these other tonal percussive sounds way down. All right, the last method we're going to look at is actually using a synthesizer to generate the tone. So for this method to work, you still need to know and understand the actual pitch of the snare. Now, when you're doing this, there's a couple things you should be aware of. First, you should use a very short decay time and sustain time, right? So this is the sound that we're using. It would maybe work for a pluck or a lead. I just took a sound from S'mores, turned down the decay and the sustain, turned down the filter, tweaked the pitch of the noise, and I actually turned off the oscillators here. So it's mainly just this sine wave. Sine waves usually work really well for this. And then I'm using a lot of distortion and a little bit of reverb. So when we play it, this is what we got. Right, so this hit only occurs right there in our progression. It doesn't occur on the other snares. And I have muted the main tonal snare from a couple minutes ago. So this method actually works really well with resynthesis. So if I was going to continue down this road, I would export this patch here, this quick little hit from Serum, commit it to audio, and then start applying effects, start mangling it, maybe pitch things up and down. You never know what's going to happen. And then see if that starts to get a better result. Right now, it's kind of the most basic version or kind of idea in terms of using a synth to get a tonal element in your snares, but you get the idea. Now, this might be something that you can layer with one of the other techniques. So we do have those percussive sounds in here. So that is kind of having two types of tonal snare processing occurring. We got those percussive sounds that have the tonal element as well as the synth. Now we can bring in that tonal snare. Let's actually bring in everything together and just let's turn them down and kind of blend to taste. So it sounds pretty good with all of them together. So there you guys go. There's 3 different techniques to create tonal snares for pretty much any genre. Just to recap, first method is going to be to boost, process, accentuate, bring out the fundamental or the harmonic that you want that fits the key of your track. Second, find another sample that has pitch to it. I know it kind of sounds obvious, but find a percussive sound, a bongo, a tom, anything that has a pitch that you can start to manipulate and do the same types of processes to from the first process, which is bring out those frequencies you want present. And the third is use a synthesizer. If you guys have any questions or comments, post them and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Like I said at the beginning of the video, I'm Echo Soundworks. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I will see you next time.